All right, so I want to talk about making the most of every moment. This is a presentation that I did. I think I created, in fact, you can see that because there's gaps on both sides. That means that this was made when PowerPoint was made for other TVs that were not widescreen. That's how long ago I created this. And so, and I don't think I've taught on this presentation, for probably 10 years. But anyway, I just did a presentation 2 hours ago. I did this presentation at a lunch, and I used this form, which is a little bit modified. This form is going to be a little bit different than the PowerPoint, so don't sweat it. There'll be a couple little differences here and there, but so originally when I did this presentation a long time ago, it was about time management. And time management is something that if you've paid attention in the leadership world with time management, there's been a process of change in the way that it's been taught and the way it's been understood over the years. And now when I talk about time management, I don't really want to talk about the same things that everybody else talks about. I want to bring a different change to it and a little different perspective. Back in the 90s when I started doing PowerPoint and started doing some kind of teaching, time management was all about, like on the sheet here it says, you'd hear people teach, it's the most abundant resource that we have. It's the best one that we have. And time is like money, but the difference is that you have to spend it every day and it gets replenished again the next day. You can't save time. It keeps moving, right? Or you might hear that every day has 1,440 minutes in it. And at the end of the day, they're gone. So you have to use them. And, or you might hear that, for every minute that goes by, your life is that much shorter. And so it's a way to kind of put a little fear in you and maybe manipulate you into taking your life seriously and not waste any time. And so back in the 90s, the theme might be there's a limited supply, so don't waste what you got. Okay? And then after the 2000s, books started coming out, people started thinking differently about managing time. And so now it was like, okay, you can't manage time. Time just moves at the same pace all the time. You can't change it. You can't speed it up. Can't slow it down. Time is what it is. All you can do is manage your priorities. So now it's a cranial thing. It's about thinking through your priorities, making the most important things the ones at the top of your list, put the lower things at the bottom part of your list, make a to-do list, put it on a spreadsheet, whatever you need to do. And so that was that part. During that 10 years or so, that's what a lot of people were teaching in the leadership world. Okay, so today I want to look at it differently, not like those two ways, but we want to look at it a little bit differently than that. And so rather than focusing on not wasting time or making all your priorities in the proper list, I want to look at it in terms of opportunities. In the terms of moments. So you've got moments, and every moment represents an opportunity. Okay, so as we go through this, we can actually interchange the word moment for opportunity in a lot of ways, and it'll make sense to you. Okay? So let's move on a little bit here. So these were the ones that you've got on your sheet that are some of the traditional cliches that you'd heard over the years. So what's in a moment? So here's a book that I read 15 years ago or so. It's called Seizing Your Divine Moment. It's by a guy named Erwin McManus. This guy is a great speaker and a great author. He's really creative. He doesn't just talk about a bunch of facts and statistics. He's really creative. He talks about the movement and how things are changing, and he's really artistic in the way he writes. And you can kind of see by what I'm going to talk about here how it's kind of creative compared to some other ways. And so, but this is a great book if anybody ever wants to read it. It's great, Seizing Your Divine Moment. And so when I read this book, there was one particular section in a chapter, one of the first chapters, that stuck in my mind, and it changed the way I think forever. And I haven't read that book really for many, many years, but I still remember that chapter, and I can still teach on it. And I actually bring it up every once in a while. You guys may not have heard it, but that's how much of an impact it made on me. So I want to share this concept with you so you guys kind of get what's going on with that. So in the book, Irwin talks about he talks about a Greek he talks about the Greek words, Greek language, and he says there is a Greek word for moment that comes from the word atomos. Atomos. So the word moment comes from the Greek word atomos. Okay? Atomos kind of sounds like atom or atomic, doesn't it? Right? So you can see how atomic or atom comes from the word atomos. And so the idea is that it's the smallest element possible. An atom is like the tiniest little thing, right? It's so tiny. Or maybe a moment is the smallest. It's not a decade. It's not a century. It's not an hour or a minute. A moment is smaller than that. It's the smallest microsecond. I don't even know I wouldn't even know how to put a unit on a moment. And we don't have to, fortunately, but moments are important. But it's the smallest measure. Now, because of that, because atoms are so small, it's easy to overlook them, right? There's atoms everywhere that we don't pay attention to. There's atoms in this paint that we don't pay attention to, but we just overlook it. The smaller it is, the easier it is to overlook it, right? Well, there's moments that we overlook too. There's just moments that just slip right by because they're not very significant. And so what we need to realize is that every moment packs a whole lot of power and energy potentially, just like an atom. An atom, you know what we do with atoms? We split them and then they blow up. That's where you get an atom bomb, right? So you can get an explosion from one single little atom that releases all kinds of power and energy that's so far beyond the size of the atom. It's not directly proportional to the size, but it's an explosive time. Okay, or it's an explosive moment that comes from a small little atom. So the idea here is that the smallest elements can create big reactions or big actions, and the smallest moment can do the same thing. Think about times in history that have been huge. Think about the moment that somebody pulled the trigger, the first time somebody pulled the trigger to shoot JFK, to shoot him in the head back in Dallas in 1963. That was a huge moment, and it changed the whole world forever. You all know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They have a movie about it.
They have lots of movies about it. But it's a moment in time that changed everything, right? It's a moment that changed the whole world. And so what I want to do here is rather than us looking at time like a linear line, right? You could think of time, you all know about a timeline, right? You got eternity past this way, a line and an arrow, eternity past this way, and then eternity future this way, and it's just eternity, the line just goes on forever, right? And then there's a little notch right in the middle here, and it keeps moving slowly towards eternity future, the future. And that's what we think of as time, is it's just slowly moving that way. But I want to think of time not linear like a line, but I want to think of it as a series of moments out in front of us, or a series of moments behind us, right? So these are moments that are in front of us, and they're all different moments. There might be really significant moments like JFK getting shot in the head. There's going to be more moments like that, or maybe that the moment that the first plane ran into one of the buildings in 9/11. That was a significant moment, and everything changed, right? To insignificant moments. There's a lot of insignificant moments that pass us by every day, and we don't even think about it. Our memory doesn't even grab a hold of them because they're so insignificant. But nevertheless, they are moments, and they're there. So think about this for a second. When we look backwards, there's probably a whole lot of things, moments that we regret, things that passed us by and we didn't catch. We didn't catch it, and we wish we could change those moments going backwards. We all have that, regrets, the what ifs, And so the idea here is that what if we could reduce some of those going forward so that we don't miss those things, right? So the truth is that we, over the course of our lifetime, there's really a handful of moments that really define each one of us, that really decide who we are and change the entire path of the way that we go. There's a handful of them that stand out amongst others. There's hundreds of significant moments in our lives that change our lives, but there's a handful of them that really change your life. And I mean, it could be, what can you think of that would be some of the most significant moments in your life that might define who you are?
When I gave birth to my children.
Bingo. That moment, the first time you saw especially the first time you saw your first child, it's like, wow. Or maybe it was your second child. I don't know. Maybe it was the last one because you're thinking, okay, I'm done now.
That too.
Yeah. But, or like for me, there's a significant moment, like it was one phone call. So I had one phone call that kind of changed my whole life. I didn't even know it at the time. At the time, it was just a phone call. But I was at a place in my life where I thought, okay, I want to do something great. I want to do something positive. So I called up this organization called Youth for Christ. And I said, okay, I've been studying my Bible, and I want to learn this stuff, or I want to start teaching this stuff now. And so I want to be part of Youth for Christ. I just want to volunteer, and I want to work with maybe middle school kids or whatever. What do you have open? Is there anything I can do to kind of help? I want to volunteer. I want to get involved. And they said, yeah, that'd be great. Why don't you, and then why don't you go to tomorrow? Why don't you go to McKinley Middle School, and tomorrow night at 6 o'clock we've got a meeting down there, and you can help with that. There's one volunteer down there that's working with this class, but she could use a lot of help. So I went there and I met this gal, and I started helping her lead this group of junior high kids. Well, she ended up being my wife. Isn't that crazy? One phone. What if I wouldn't have made that phone call, or if I would have called a different organization? That's crazy, right? 26 years later, here we are, and that one phone call changed the course of everything, right? So there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of moments that are in our lives that change everything. They change the entire course of action. There was a moment when I decided, okay, I'm gonna throw in my entire life savings and live on very little for a while to be a Papa Murphy's owner. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make that decision. And that moment, everything changed going forward for myself and my two partners, and things changed that way. So there's a lot of different moments that there's also bad things too that can happen, right? Good moments, bad moments, but there's significant moments that we have that are in place. To a lesser degree, every year, every month, every week, every day, right? We have other moments. They're not necessarily as significant. Maybe you don't have a life-altering moment that takes place this month, but there are moments that are still changing. They change the course of your life to a smaller degree. Good or bad, right? We have tons of different moments that are in front of us that we can look at. So, the biggest moments each year, each month, each week, add those all up, and it makes a significant change in the direction of your life and what you're doing. It can also make a big difference, a big influence on the direction of other people's lives that are in your life. Because, right, what happens to you happens to your kids in a lot of ways, right? There's a lot of significance to that, and so the idea here is that we don't want to miss out on significant moments, but yet that's what we do. We miss out on moments all the time. As humans, we're naturally horrible when it comes to seizing our moments. By the way, seizing is spelt wrong there, so don't judge me there. I didn't write it, but. I did write it, but I spoke into never mind. I'm just making excuses now. We all have a history of what ifs, regrets, and missed opportunities. It's natural. It's natural for us to prioritize now before later. We're thinking about now, and we're not always thinking about later. We're not thinking about those moments that are going to come later. We're just thinking about the now. So it's easy and natural for us to do that, and it's easy to get caught up in the moment. And overlook. It's easy to think about the moments about ourselves and not think about other people too. It's just really easy to do that. So, but when we think about this in terms of moments and not missing them, things can kind of come into focus. I'll give you a few stories so you understand how it works out. So, when my daughter was, I think, around 4 years old, I remember this. It stands out in my head because this was a distinct moment that changed the way I think. When she was about 4 years old, I was at home and I was working on my computer, and I was focused. I was really kind of deep in thought of whatever it was I was doing. I don't remember what I was doing, but I'm working on it, and I was trying to get it done, you know, and my 4-year-old daughter comes up and says, Daddy, will you read my book for me? You know, will you read my book? And I remember saying, you know, I will read this book to you in just a little while, but if you can go play for a little while, I got to finish this. I'm sorry. But if you could, but I will in a little while, okay? You know, and she was bummed out. Well, a couple of minutes later, she comes up, Daddy, will you play with me? I need, you all know where this is going, right? Yeah. And so it's like, will you play? And I was like, you know, Jordan, you got to, I will, but I got, you know, keep in mind, she was 4. I was still learning how to be a dad then. I got it figured out now with this part, but and you know, and I said, you know, why don't you go in your room, play, and I'll be in a while, and so you know, she left, and I went back to doing what I was doing, and there was silence for a couple of minutes, and the silence was kind of deafening because it's like she wasn't there anymore, and then it hit me, I just missed an opportunity, I just missed a moment with my daughter, because I missed a major moment with my daughter because I was focused on a less important moment. I was focused on something that didn't matter as much. So I missed a significant moment because I was focusing on a non-significant moment. Makes sense? I got distracted. I got my face in the cheese, and I lost track of what was most important about my moments. I got my moments mixed up. And so I realized, she's going to go to bed at 8:30. I can pick this up then. What am I doing? So I closed my laptop and I went and I gave her like the next hour all just focus. And she loved it. She's like, but why didn't I do that before that? Because I missed my moment, right? I mean, I'm glad I figured it out. But from that time, that changed me because I decided I'm not going to miss that moment anymore. So what I did is I trained my brain to look for that moment. Now when that moment comes along, it's automatic. It's like, yeah, hey, what do you want to do? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't times where you got to focus on what you're doing and you got to tell your kid, hold off for a minute. But this was not. I did not need to be that at that moment. I was just lost in the moment. I wasn't prioritizing right. Okay, so there are lots of reasons for us to pay attention to the moment on what we're doing, and not lose those moments. Right? Anybody relate to that? Anybody been there? And then after you're like, oh gosh, I blew it. But we can do better than that, and we can. But we just have to change our brain to think that way. Let's see. So organizing your moments. So one more thing I want to talk about too. So when it comes to your moments and sorting through and discerning your moments, there's a couple different kinds. There's a way to proactively manage your moments, and there's a way to reactively manage your moments. And here's the best example I can think of for that. Think of a fireman, right? A fireman doesn't know when the fire's going to break out, but he's ready for it, or she's ready for it. The fire breaks out, they don't have to, there's not chaos going on then, there's order. They go into protocol, and they go and they know what to do. Now, they didn't wait till the fire happens and then start training for it, right? Kind of goes back to our last presentation, doesn't it? Yeah. So what happened is there's a moment in time that there's a spark, boom, and a building goes up in flames, and the fireman goes and knows what to do and deals with it. And that's the reaction is that, okay, now there's something to do. There's a moment that needs attention, so I got to go react to it. But the truth is there was proactive management of that ahead of time because they already knew that was going to happen. They just didn't know when. And so they prepared for it ahead of time. They said, okay, let's do some training. Let's figure out if this happens and we're going to do this. If this happens and we're going to do this. We're going to be ready for it. Here's the protocol. Here's the steps we're going to take. And these are going to be the right steps. And so when it happens, they were ready to do it. So that's the difference between reactive and proactive. They can be excellent at being reactive because they were proactive, right? So go back to my example with my daughter. Now I'm proactive. Now I know what to look for. Now I know that if my daughter really needs to talk to me, if she really needs my attention, now I already know what to do because I've already trained for it. I've already gone through the training. I've already organized my moments in a way that now I know what the trigger is now. So when I see that in her, I don't miss it. I'm aware of it now. right? And so it's important that we're aware of that. How many times do we just go through life and we have opportunities, moments pop up right in front of us, and we're not paying attention and they just go right on by? It's really frightening to think about that, how many great opportunities slip right past us because we're not conscious and we're not aware of it, because we don't even know what to look for. And then we find ourselves reacting to something and not being prepared for it because we never thought about it ahead of time. We never organized and made the decision what we're going to do if this happens, like a fireman would. Firemen just know. They just know what they're going to do. And so that's part of how we can organize our moments. You don't have to plan anything to miss a moment. It just happens because you're not planning it, because you're not paying attention. You just don't have to. You just live your life moment to moment, and you're going to miss all kinds of significant moments. Especially if you're focused on yourself and you're not really focused on the needs of other people, you just miss all kinds of great opportunities. You do have to plan to seize many of your most important moments. You got to plan ahead. What did we do at Halloween? We planned ahead. We seized the moment of that day because we planned ahead. We figured it out. We weren't reactive. Same thing. So we got to be able to recognize our moments when they come up, and already know what to do. Already know what to do. That's the key. But we have to spend time thinking through that. So when we organize our time, it requires compartmentalization. So this is important, compartmentalization. So think, if you don't get anything else out of this, get this out of it. Okay, compartmentalization is when you draw a line between something and you separate something. How many of you don't like your food to mix? Anybody? You don't like to mix your food? Do you ever use those plates that have the little dividers? Do you love those? Because then you're, right? I mean, I'm a mixer, so I don't care. But compartmentalization is kind of like that. It keeps your food from mixing. It keeps one thing from blending into something else. And so there's this section here in the bottom that says there is a time for. You may recognize this. There's a song by the Byrds for every season, you know. And there's also a section in the Bible that talks about this, but this is not scripture. This is what I made up to talk about compartmentalization. But it's along the same theme. And so here's how this works. So there's a time to work and there's a time to play. Okay? Now sometimes we can be playing when we're supposed to be working. Right? Or sometimes we could be working when we're supposed to be playing. Right? I mean, we get those mixed up sometimes, right? Compartmentalization puts more of a boundary between it so that we can do the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. Okay? So in the situation with my daughter, I was trying to work when I should have been playing with her. Right? We'll keep going. So there's a time to work and a time to play. But what if you'd be more conscious about putting a compartmentalizing your moments so that you can protect your moments so that you don't miss them. Make sense? You compartmentalize and you don't miss your moments the same way. There's a time to plan and a time to take action. Ever met a planner that just plans, but they never do it? They're dreamers. They got all kinds of great dreams, but they can never know how to land the plane. Right? Or how about somebody else that maybe they take action. They're just always doing, but they never stop to plan things out. Right? It's the opposite. Right? But the best way to be is that there's a time to plan and then there's a time to take action. And that there's a line that defines those so you don't miss your opportunities. That's why our Red Book has you plan first and do second. Right? Well, what if we ignore that and we just mix them up and we're trying to plan in the afternoons and doing in the morning? It doesn't work. You got to follow it. You got to plan first and do second. And so helping us compartmentalize helps us put those things in perspective so we don't miss our moments. There's a time to speak and a time to listen. Right? Sometimes wisdom is silence for people. Some people should just close their mouths and just do more listening. And other times, sometimes people need to speak up. They're being silent, but they need to speak up. It's like, no, speak up. You've got something to say, and it's really important, and people need to hear it. Speak up. So we need to speak up when it's time to speak up. We need to be silent when it's time to be silent and not get those mixed up. That's the compartmentalization part, knowing the difference of those times. Right? Time to encourage and a time to discipline. There is a time to, most of the time, to be encouraging to our employees, but there is a time to terminate. There just is a time, and we can't just keep somebody forever if it's time to let them go. somebody's disruptive in your company, you have to know how to compartmentalize and say, in this compartment right here are our eagles, and in this compartment right here are the turkeys that used to work for us. Right? It's like there's a compartment, they're compartmental, they're removed, they're not mixed in, right? There's a time to search and there's a time to be content. You know, I interview a lot of people that have spun through a whole lot of jobs. In their minds, you're just always looking for another job because whatever your current job isn't. Sometimes that's not the best way to be. Sometimes you need to be content. Sometimes you need to get really good at whatever it is you're doing. You know, you just whatever it is. Maybe it's a great fit. Maybe it's not a great fit. But just get really good at it, and it's going to open up doors, and you'll finally get to where you need to be. But you got to compartmentalize and not get those mixed up. Where there's a time to build and a time to maintain. I have to deal with that all the time. When do we buy another store? When do we not buy another store? When do we close a store? When do we not? When do we maintain and just stay the same? We've had a lot of people that have wanted to sell stores to us. And so for us, saying no is just as important as a decision as saying yes. You know, it's not just about just buy. That can be dumb. We closed 3 stores because we did that. You know, there is a time to question and a time to trust. Ever known somebody that just can't trust anybody? They're always questioning, why do we do this? I don't think that's true. You know, it's like, just trust me. Just trust me. So there's a time to trust and to go ahead and put your faith in that. And then there's a time not to. Somebody's calling you up on the phone. Yeah, I got something to sell you. There's a bridge out in Nebraska. It's on sale right now. Okay. No, you don't trust that person because they're trying to rip you off. Right? There's people you don't trust and there's people you do trust. Don't get them mixed up. I have a mother-in-law that trusts the people she shouldn't trust. She'll fall into that. She's had people from India working on her computer remotely, and she pays $500 to work on something that never needed to be worked on. She trusts these people. But then people that's in her family that have her best interest, she doesn't trust. She gets it backwards because something when she was younger. But you got to compartmentalize, but you got to get it right. Make sense? Anybody ever seen people like that? It's like, why do you keep going back to that person? That person hurts you all the time. They end up trusting somebody that they shouldn't trust, but they don't trust the people that are looking out for them, trying to get them to do something different. So it's the way we are. There's a time to teach and a time to learn. Ever known just a know-it-all, just happens to know everything about everything, and they're going to teach it to you, but they don't listen very well? Well, sometimes there is a time to teach. There's a time for every one of us to teach. And I want you guys to teach. I want you guys to show people what you know and help them to do. But there's also a time for us to learn. You guys are taking that time right now to learn something, right? And that's because I've taken a lot of time to learn from other people. You have to have both, and they're compartmentalized. There's a time to teach and there's a time to learn, right? And when you learn first, then you can go, oh, now I have something to teach. Then you go teach it. You know, you teach it and you make it your own. Like I said in the last presentation, pretend it's your thoughts. You're the brilliant one. Take it back. You know, I love to do that. I love just to talk and share a bunch of John Maxwell stuff and just claim it's mine. We all do that, right? It's okay. We can do that. It's just information. It's the laws of nature that are real, and it's just revealing it to people. That's all it is. So anyway, compartmentalization is a way for us to look at our moments and look at our opportunities and make sure we get them in the right place. If that makes sense. What do you guys think? Let's take a minute here. Discussion time. What do you guys think about this? Could you see that? Can you see how we miss moments sometimes in our job or in our lives, and how we can change the way we think to prepare ourselves to be aware of those moments and notice them and do something about it? What do you guys think? What are some examples of that you can see?
My daughter does it every night because I'm just so tired from work. She's like, Mommy, let me get up on here and watch movies with you. And I'm like, no, back away, Hannah. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. And it's like almost every night. And
how could you compartmentalize that?
By at least watching a couple of movies with her and then maybe falling asleep with her.
And it doesn't even have to be a couple movies. It could be 10 minutes. Okay, we're gonna play. Let's get the blocks out. We're gonna play for 10 minutes. But after 10 minutes, you got to go to bed. Okay? You're compartmentalizing, right? You're not missing the moment. You're actually seizing that moment.
That actually works when you're feeding them too. Just one bite.
Yeah.
Just one for right now.
Yep.
And then you can give them
Right.
okay then.
You know, when it comes to applying this to our workplace too, especially as leaders, much like my example of my daughter. I mean, we have employees, same situation. You have employees, you know, you're working, you're doing your thing, you're sheeting some dough, you're chopping some vegetables, and someone comes in, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going all right. And you could respond one way by saying, hey, okay, well, hey, we're gonna have a good night tonight, so you're gonna be on whatever register, and you can move forward. Or maybe there's a moment there that you hear something in the voice, and something sparks you, like something's not right. And instead of reacting the first way that I said, you say, hey, hey, come with me. Let's step out back real quick. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? You doing okay? And maybe that's the moment that makes a significant difference in their life, because you didn't miss that moment. Now, I'm not suggesting every time someone comes in and says, yeah, I'm not doing, I'm just doing all right. It doesn't mean you need to jump into drama mode and try to pretend like there's some big issue that you need to save them from. But what I am saying is, if you're aware of it and you're thinking through it and you have that awareness going on, sometimes you can catch some things that ordinarily you wouldn't. Much like if I would have walked into my house that night and said, okay, I'm going to pay attention to my daughter, and I'm going to wait and see if there's anything that comes up that I'm going to be aware of it. So then she comes up, she goes, Dad, you want to play? Boom, I'm on it, because I'm aware of it. I don't have my face in the cheese. But if we have our face in the cheese, we're going to miss those opportunities to make a difference, whatever it is. And sometimes the smallest little thing can make a big difference in other people's lives. I've had 3 different times in the last 5 years that I can think of where someone has said to me, so one time I was talking to somebody. It was an employee that I worked with a long time ago, and I hadn't seen him for a long time, and we had lunch actually, and she says, my wife and I had lunch with her and her husband, and she said, I want to tell you something. I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, but there was something you said to me when we were meeting once, and it changed everything for me. She told me what it was. I don't remember now what it was, but so, and it changed everything for her. It changed the way she thought about going forward with whatever it was. And then I had a former youth group kid that went up through high school with me, and he called me one time. He just heard this incredible message that kind of made him, it was a message of appreciation or thankfulness or something, and it just sparked him in a way that he called me up and goes, I just want to tell you, thank you for the time you spent with me when I was a teenager. And he told me this, and then another one called me up, or I spoke to, that said something. And the thing is, just out of those 3, two of those things, what they mentioned, I don't even remember. I don't even remember saying those things to them. So the point is that sometimes the things that we contribute towards other people that we think are little, sometimes are really big. And we don't even know it. We don't even know the positive influence. It's like that atom that can create a big explosion. That moment that you show somebody kindness, maybe when they're not used to it, or you listen to them when they're not used to being listened to, or you pay attention to them and they're used to being ignored. That can change everything. Those moments are moments we don't want to miss. But I'm afraid we do all the time. All of us. I know I miss those opportunities a lot, right? So what if we just got better at that? What if we all got better at paying attention to the moments and seeing the moment of opportunity where we could maybe have an atom bomb go off that sparks somebody off in the right direction, right? Know what I'm saying? In one way, it's kind of cool that I mentioned these 3 times, but in the other way, it's kind of sad that I can only remember 3 times. I mean, I can remember some other ones, but those are the ones that... Does that make sense? We have the opportunity to catch these moments and make a difference in people's lives all the time. If we just pay attention and do it, we can. We should be making an impact on a lot of people's lives. But somehow we just miss it. We just miss it, and we're doing our own thing or whatever. So I would say compartmentalize your lives in a way that you don't miss those. Plan your time, have planning time where you think through, what am I going to do? How am I going to try to help somebody this week? I drop my daughter off at school 2 or 3 times a week. Her grandma drops her off the other times, but I drop her off at school, and we've done this thing for a year or so now, where we pull up to the school, and she's getting ready to go out, and I'll say something to her. I'll say, all right, have a great day today. Make somebody smile. And I say that to plant that in her head. Or maybe the next day, there's like 10 or 12 things I say to her, and I just, whatever comes to my mind. Sometimes it's, hey, why don't you try to sit next to somebody that's sitting alone in your lunch today? Okay. And she always says, okay. And, or whatever it is. Why don't you say something nice to somebody you normally wouldn't say something nice to today? And so, see, what I'm doing is I'm getting her to think about not missing the moment. I'm getting her an awareness so that now she sees somebody sitting alone at lunch, she might think, oh, my dad just brought that to my awareness. Maybe I'll do that. And the thing is it works. Because I mean, most of the time it's probably just wasted words. But she did come home. She said, well, hey, so I was sitting next to this gal, and I was talking to her, and I got a new friend, and I want her to come over Friday night, you know. I'm saying, oh, how'd you meet her? Well, she was sitting in the cafeteria by herself, and I thought, I'll just walk over. I thought, I just planted that seed like a week ago. And she did it. And I asked her that. He goes, and I said, did that have anything to do with what I said? She goes, well, probably sort of. She wouldn't give me the credit. But do you see what I'm saying? We can plant those seeds and help to prepare other people's minds. But we can prepare our employees that same way. Hey, look for opportunities to make a difference. Look for an opportunity to train somebody in this. Look for opportunities to give this person a compliment or this person appreciation. Don't miss the opportunities to appreciate somebody. You know, how many compliments go unspoken because we just miss the opportunities? Gosh, way too many. There's not a person in this room that does it anywhere close to where we should. Right? You know, what do you think of that? Isn't that kind of interesting to think about managing your time and by managing your opportunities?